Brad, can you hear us? Brad, can you hear us? Okay, there we go. Yay.
Say, what's happening?
Recording in progress.
Holy cow.
Guess
Yeah.
so. All right, with that, I'll gavel in April's Ways and Means Committee meeting. Roll call, please.
Alderwoman Sims,
Here.
Alderman Gould,
Here.
Alderwoman Tice.
Here.
Alderman Erger.
Here.
All members are present.
Great, thank you. Item 2 on the agenda is approval or amendment of the agenda. Does anyone have any amendments, additions, subtractions to propose? Any objection to approving by acclamation? Seeing none, it'll stand approved. Item 3 on the agenda is report of the committee chair and alderman. I have no report. Alderman Gould,
No report.
Alderwoman Tice,
No report.
Alderman Erger.
No report.
We do not appear to have a city administrator report for item 4 of the agenda, so we'll move on to department reports, item 5. 5A is the investment report. Do we have
Brad's
Brad
online.
online to lead us off on that? Hi, Brad. Can you,
Good evening, hello.
yours?
Thanks for having me. Yes, so I'm hoping that you all have a 3-page report in front of you. Here we are 3 months into the new year already. Seems like the older I get, the faster this happens. At the top, you see there are three, page 1, there are 3 spreadsheets, and that kind of goes in chronological order. The top spreadsheet, is what you have earned so far this year. That's $184,218. If you go to the middle spreadsheet, that's what you earned in 2024, $728,405. And at the very bottom, just give you a total from everything from the beginning of our relationship until we started doing this January 1st of 24, and that was 2.7. So in total, all these accounts have earned about 3.6 million. You guys have gone through very, very low interest rate environment to very high interest rate environment, and seeing a little bit of a decline as we've kind of talked about the last couple of months. So if there are there any questions on that?
Just in the broadest of strokes, and I guess the Reader's Digest version, but the activity in the markets that we've been reading about is, what, if any, effect do you forecast that having on our investment plan?
I plan to go over that. Let me touch on that here on page 3.
And real quick, Brad, can we put his volume up a little bit?
Is that any better?
It's on our
It's
side.
on our end.
It's.
We can hear you.
Okay. Okay, I will touch on that here in about 30 seconds. The second page is the 3 columns there. Just, I add a column every month. And so you kind of see about how much you guys have earned on a month-to-month basis here this year, with the average kind of maintaining at that 61,000 a month mark. So to date this year, you're at about $184,000. We go to page 3. I picked this up in November. September of last year, we started, the federal funds rate was pretty high, and they started to lower the Fed funds rate because inflation had been ticking down. So I did want to touch on, hopefully briefly, what the market's been doing since Thursday of last week, and kind of tie that into this 3, the green, blue, and red lined chart that you're looking at. So everybody's freaking out in the traditional investment world with their financial planning, their retirement, and all that stuff. And rightfully so. It's scary. I think the market, over a period of time will correct itself. But when it comes to this kind of stuff, you have nothing to worry about. You've bought government bonds that are fixed rate of return. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what happens with tariffs or Apple's next iPhone flops, anything like that. These are all government bonds. You buy them at a particular price and a yield, and you get that payment every 6 months until that security matures, and then you get all of your principal back. It does nothing else matters out in the world. So what you're looking at here, which I wanted to kind of bring to your attention because the tariffs have a bit of a role in this. In November, I showed you that blue line, and that blue line indicates the Federal Reserve, the likelihood, the forward-looking likelihood that the Federal Reserve will lower the Fed funds rate to ease the monetary policy and to bring to slow the decrease in the Fed funds rate and to more stimulate the economy. And so that we're looking at about a 4.42% in December, all the way down, and it just went from December to December to 3.79. Now we're looking at these tariffs. You've seen what's happened in the stock market, and the Federal Reserve is thinking, man, we might go into a recession. And so we need to lower the Fed funds rate maybe a little bit faster than we had forecasted at the beginning of this year. And so the beginning of this year, they were looking at probably one rate drop this year. They'd already done 3 at the end of last year. And now over the course of the last 3 months, we're looking at the market has built 3 rate reductions in and as many as 5. So now there's kind of an updated or amended Bloomberg future forecast of what may happen with the federal funds rate. Now that's directly tied to money that you and I personally and business-wise have sitting in cash. So whatever that money is that's not locked into a rate, those rates will likely be declining over the course of the year. And then I threw that little green line in there because in that same period of time, those are the securities that you own, and the average yield on those is 4.79. So that just kind of lends itself to show you that the world may fluctuate, money market rates may fluctuate, stock market may fluctuate, all that stuff, but you are locked in, and that green line are the securities that you own between now and April of 26, giving you an average yield of that 4.79%. So I think that's pretty cool. And Bola and Michelle have been wonderful about getting stuff reinvested and just continuing with this disciplined ladder approach where unless you need it, you have needed some money. We've brought it from 12.7 million, I think down to 10.2, 10.3 million in the general fund account. So, but those, unless it's that money is needed, we're reinvesting and maintaining this laddered strategy to earn you as much as we can over time. And I think that's all that I have for you, unless you have any questions.
Have any questions? Not seeing any, so thanks for giving us that update.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all very much. Hope you have a good evening.
Thanks, Brad.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you. All right, moving on. 5B is of the agenda is financial statements.
Hi, good evening. In the package, you have your January and February financial statements. We're just starting out the year, so things haven't necessarily reached any major thresholds. I'm going to just dive right into February. And honestly, one of the big things that we do at the first quarter of the year is we do business license, so occupational license by February. The budget is 1.6. By the end of February, we were at 1.3. So it's been a pretty successful program even for February and for 2025. Otherwise, as I've sort of indicated, we're just now sort of ramping up into the year. There's nothing major to report unless you have any questions.
When I was looking at your January, February revenue analysis, did I read that sales tax?
Sales tax was down in January by 1%, but in February by 1%, but I believe in January it was up, if I remember correctly. February it was down. Give me a second, I don't have that one opened. February,
So
yeah,
I'm
February.
looking
it
at the
was-
January 2025, it says that sales tax is 14% lower from,
And the use tax is surprisingly up by 25%. So when I looked at the sales tax versus the use tax, then potentially, I guess they were ordering more online and then not necessarily as in stores. So when I looked at the taxes, I looked at those sort of combined between the sales tax and the use tax.
okay, so if I'm looking at just what's titled, I thought, because then I thought like you have January, February revenue analysis, the sales tax is listed at 1%, but on the
Yeah,
other
so the
one-
sales tax seemed to have caught up significantly in February, and then the use tax still stayed ahead by 5%. So it wasn't super alarming to me initially. We'll continue to watch it and track it. And those are some of those things that we don't have any control over, but we watch closely.
So is it fair to say that if we isolated brick and mortar purchases, that's down?
It is, yeah. By February, it was down 1%, so it feels like they sort of caught up.
Not seeing any other questions. So were there any other items to present in that section?
No, like I said, we're just getting started. No major expenditures to report. And then we were, like I said, wrapping up business license, and those seem to be trending well and strong again for this year as well.
All right, well then, moving on, 5C, the agenda is the 2024 audit timeline.
The audit timeline that's attached to this was submitted by the auditors to just some timeline thresholds for us to meet in-house. We have met all of those. They will be at Ways and Means in May to present, and then they'll be at the board for approval in June. So I expect us to meet all of our timelines, and we are moving along nicely. They've been in probably 3 times now. They've been in 3 different Wednesdays. Testing has gone well. They have had everything. They have found everything. All of the department heads have been great and help in assisting us with the assets and any other items that we've needed. So I'm happy to report our timeline. We're meeting all of our thresholds. Golf clap.
Thank you for delivering the good news. All right, I'm not seeing any questions on that one. Moving on, the consent agenda, item 6A, the only item on the agenda would be the approval of the minutes from February 6, 2025. Has everyone had an opportunity?
Motion to approve consent agenda.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, the minutes will stand approved. That's something that we can approve by acclamation, right? How I prefer to do it. So item seven on the agenda is old business. 7A, the employee benefits discussion, tuition reimbursement. Who's
Tangela.
Better? Yep. Sorry, my apologies. So what you have in front of you is the follow-up from February's meeting. We were asked to provide more information regarding tuition reimbursement. And so what I found were received from UMSL was their actual 2024-2025 student fee schedule, which shows the amount per credit per degree or the program that an individual is participating in. And so with that being shown, our current amount for $3,000 per employee is enough to cover more than one course, depending on what they're pursuing. It's enough to cover books, fees, things of that nature. It is based on the program that they choose, and that's just what I provided for you. Not sure. Questions regarding?
Alderwoman Tice?
Well, we had talked at the last meeting about inching this up. I do see that the this would cover a 3-credit class, but I can't imagine that employees who are pursuing some sort of education are only taking 3 credits a year. So I would certainly be in favor of like at least increasing this to 3,500. I think an educated employee pool is really important, and I think we should invest in them. The cost to the city is minuscule, really, would be
And then the policy is for the
$2,500, yeah.
semester. So the policy is for the semester.
semester.
So they can do a course each semester depending on what they're doing. And for the classes, the credits do vary from 1 to 5, I believe. Some are a little higher than 5,
Others, yeah.
depending on the higher you go up. But it is for each semester.
Okay, for each semester, but still, I would be in favor of increasing this. I would be, I'll make a motion to increase the student, or the tuition reimbursement to 3,500 per budget year. Because it looks like, I read it as a maximum annual limit of 3,000 per budget year, so I would like to increase it to a maximum annual limit of 3,500 per budget year.
For FY '26.
For FY '26, so starting next year.
Second that.
Okay, there's been a motion by Alderwoman Tice and a second by Alderman Gould. Is there any further discussion?
So as far as how many employees do we have that participate in this program? So this is just setting the dollar amount that we will, but whether or not it actually hits the budget is dependent on how many people will actually
Depends
participate.
on how many people participate, what program they choose to participate in. I took the liberty of going back through the budget book to see which departments were currently utilizing it. Those amounts that are presented on the memo are for some it's one person, some it's multiple people. So it just depends on their program.
Okay. And, okay.
It looks like, if I'm reading this right, it looks like 5 people, because it appears to be, or is it more than, it looks like 6,000 in fire, 6,000 in police, and 3,000 in stormwater parks.
That the rates, yes, but I believe, Chief, for fire, you have 6 people in your budget? Not currently.
Not currently.
So it depends. One person may seek something that's non-degree seeking and just take a course.
A course,
And that
yeah.
would be
Then
1
it
to
might
3
be under that. I
credits.
mean, it's
Correct.
even the UMSL credits would be under this amount, so
Yes.
it's a little more flexibility for the employees.
And these are classes that need to be, do they need to be approved by us as far as relevant to their
It has to
field?
be approved during the budgeting process, so employees should be having those conversations now so that their directors can include it in the budget process for approval.
Okay.
Other questions? I'm not seeing any, so roll call, please.
Chairwoman Sims,
Yes.
Alderman Gould,
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice.
Yes.
Alderman Erger.
Yes.
Motion carries by a vote of 4 to 0.
Great, the next item on the agenda is 7B, which is the Equipment Replacement Fund Schedule Progress Report.
I'll handle that one. So internally, along with the audit and just keeping that on track, we have inherently taken back the assets from the auditors. They kept our assets. We have successfully uploaded them into our financial software. So now Brentwood is the owner and the keeper of the assets. We are currently in the process of doing the additions and deletions for '24. We accelerated '24 with the purchase of the FEMA items. Therefore, we accelerated some of the replacement of some of the items, as well as some of the purchases. Internally, I've been speaking with the rest of senior staff, and I feel like for the replacement program, at this point, we will probably run 2 models, waiting for FEMA to reimburse us, and then on the off chance that FEMA does not reimburse us, what does that look like and how does that feel? I know in '24, when we made the decisions to do the accelerated purchases, those decisions were made. I'm not necessarily quite comfortable about how timely FEMA may be on responding to that reimbursement. So We are on track to be able to have that available for the audit and have those discussions. But at this point, I do think I'll have two sort of discussions available. In the budget book on page 26, from the replacement fund balance from the actual of 23 was 4.2 million. By the estimated of 24, we reduced it by almost $1 million to 3.3. That was based upon those accelerated purchases. So that will change sort of that replacement schedule for us. We did move up the replacement of a street sweeper. We did move up the replacement of some major items. In 25, it doesn't show the replacement of those funds. So this sort of is real picture for the replacement of the items for 25, 26, and 27. When we put the budget together, if and when FEMA reimburses us, we will get back potentially to the $4.2 million. So that's a really significant jump. So internally, as I've discussed with senior staff, I feel I'm going to run two scenarios. But questions? Yes, ma'am.
So, yeah, actually, I came thinking about FEMA reimbursement. So we're expecting 4.2 to 4.3 million to be reimbursed. We've spent
We
that
spent
much.
$1.7 million. 1 million of it was from capital and 700,000 was from park stormwater. So that reimbursement will be split accordingly based upon the spending patterns.
Okay, then what you mentioned, 4.2 and 4.3.
If you look on the budget book, in actual of 2023, so that was the fund balance for the replacement reserve, was at 4.2. The estimated column of 2024 was 3.3.
Got it.
So that's the spending pattern between 24 and 23.
Okay.
So when FEMA reimburses us, we should get back up to the 4.2 as the holding pattern. The proposed budget for 25, 26, and 27 do not inherently assume FEMA is reimbursing us. So that would be the spending pattern without the reimbursement.
So we're expecting to be reimbursed 1.7.
That is correct. That is correct.
But
That
we've
was the-
seen what's gone on in other.
That was the alternative project recommendation from FEMA to the Director of Park and Rec, yes.
And do you know the timing? I know Eric's not here, but, or I don't, unless he's there.
Hiding? No, he's
Yeah.
not here.
He's not here.
Do you know the timing of when that money was expected, or I know?
I know that the final submission was approved by the board last night, and the submission should happen this week. We then will wait for a clear check. We are asking for the contractor who is waiting on these funds to come pick it up. The likelihood, given the dollar amount, is the bank will hold it. So hopefully by next week, we'll actually do this submission for reimbursement. I would say maybe around 6 months, which is why I'm planning to potentially run two scenarios to be able to have a healthy budget conversation, and plus just given the political climate.
Have you heard from any other municipalities or states or anyone who's been expecting FEMA money that hasn't been reimbursed? I know other departments have had issues with money that was promised and hasn't come, so I didn't know if that
I
was.
have not. I have
Okay,
not heard
good.
of,
That- well,
I have
that's
not
good.
heard of FEMA not reimbursing for pending information or pending projects.
I
I have
think
not.
what was in the paper is the History Museum. I'm on the Sub-District Commissioners Board, and I think they were expecting about 200,000 plus, and they received a letter last week that those funds will not be coming through. Percent of their total budget, which is not significant, but for us, it is a significant amount. So we are keeping our fingers crossed, hoping that the money comes through.
Thank you.
So any questions or heartburn with moving forward in that direction and actually making two different, understood. Thank you.
So part of this discussion, I think underneath that is Dan. I know that there has been a request from, I guess during the budget process, that the city, based on all this information, reevaluate our vehicle replacement policy. So Dan just has a general overview of where we are in that and steps going forward.
Yeah, tried to include the resolution in there. So I looked at the handbook. So the handbook, if you look at section 5.12, vehicle commuting policy, it references this resolution 980, but I know I wrote resolution 1060.1. 1060.1 modified the section on the police as far as the vehicle frequency, 3 years, 75,000 miles for patrol vehicles, and then the unmarked and command staff would be 5 years, 75,000 miles. So since I wrote that in 2020, some things have changed. So I wanted to point out that, they've got their off-road SU or off-road, I guess you call it side-by-side, as well as the fire. So that wasn't in the original 1060.1 because we didn't have it. So if you look at the thresholds of when you replace different things, that's not included in there. I need to add that to the table, as well as the canine unit. So there was no canine unit when that was written. That needs to be put in there. But also the handbook needs to be trued up, since if you look at that Resolution 980, it mentions who has take-home vehicles. So it lists the police chief, police majors, the fire chief, assistant chief, and then the superintendent of public works. So it doesn't list the lieutenants. It also references like a stipend that was allowed in certain categories that doesn't exist. So I wanted to get rid of 980, true up 1060, I guess it'd be 1060.2 or whatever the city attorney tells me. And then that moving forward would be the new policy. The other thing I wanted to point out is there is no criteria for EV vehicles. So if we are migrating to EVs for like planning or police, we need to put in a mileage and usage, how many years you're going to use one of those as well. So that's something that needs to change. And then under finance, I just included like what some of these vehicles have cost, just so that if we're changing these policies, you're going to see these dollars swing back and forth in different years.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of what we discussed was the fact that we tend to turn over vehicles fairly regularly, and I think, we'd like to be able to try to extend some of them a little bit more. So, I wouldn't mind seeing what it would look like if some of these increase a year or two on them. So if it's a 3-year replacement, what does it look like if it goes to 5-year, 100,000, and 7-year, 125,000? And then for an EV, we certainly shouldn't be. Most of the data suggests that 6 to 7 years is when you actually start to somewhat break even of the cost. That then it starts being cheaper than an ICE vehicle. So, I think we definitely for EVs should have a longer period than a regular combustion. I don't know what that would be if it's, but I think definitely in the 8 to 10 year range on an EV would be more preferable in my opinion, because they typically don't have part of the draw of them is that they don't have so much wear other than tires on the internal combustion aspects of it. So not combustion, but internal engine aspects. So Alderman Tice, I'm sure you have experience with EVs more than I do. So
we personally have a car, and it's a 2019 and it has new tires, so that's the extent of the so it's. And we don't have any intent of getting rid of it. But I do have other questions. So my other question in this is, are there other vehicles other than the canine, the off-road, the UTVs, that, so is our fleet larger than when this was designed? And I guess how does that, and I'm struggling with, do we have a policy that then overlays with the financial, you're setting up a reserve for replacement for these vehicles. And so I'm trying to wrestle with, do you have a policy and then we look at the reserve for replacement fund, or do we need to overlay these so that we think about the policy and we think about what we can afford? Because what I don't want to do is create a vehicle replacement policy that replaces vehicles so quickly, and we have so many that then there's no capital money left to ever pave a street or fix a sidewalk. So I think we need to figure out how to balance safety of our employees who are in these vehicles and the citizens who they use the vehicles to serve with what the city can afford.
Heard. I mean, I can speak that I don't think that it ever coordinated with itself. I think that prior to actually having a replacement program in place, the theory was any revenue over expenditures per year, if it was over the 5% per the ordinance, it was automatically placed in the replacement reserve account. So there was no functional manner, you were actually saving money and saving well, but not based upon actually trying to replace items and doing that. So I think as we continue to march down this and have better information and coordinate better, that is absolutely ideal. So if you'll give us a moment to keep coordinating those efforts and getting there. Currently, what we're doing is sort of reactionary, much like in '24 with the progression of purchasing some items ahead of time. What we're going to now do is take those dollars out, slide other items in, and do it to what we would assume would be a natural replacement schedule. If that's not the case, then we need to make sure that police is replacing at a different rate, or so those efforts will start to be coordinated, but they weren't in the past. So
I don't know how long that will take, but my personal preference would be, let's figure this out, and like, let's not rush and come back next month with a policy when we don't know how the vehicle replacement funding would work, and if it takes a few months to kind of
yeah, hopefully,
coordinate all
once
that.
the audit's done, that's going to be our next top priority. And then now that we know, because we did distribute asset sheets to all of the departments, so we're starting at a really good functional place where we trust the information. So they were able to delete items that we no longer have, so we won't have to put dollars away for those, as well as make sure that the additions are correct. So I think having good information now allows us to start to tackle these types of conversations. So I'm comfortable that hopefully by June, July, we're gonna have some really solid information.
And we will be changing the sweeper too, because that was, the industry standard's now about 10 years, and we kept ours way longer than 10 years, and you saw that it failed, and I need to true up that threshold on that as well. They just don't make them to last, 15 years.
So I guess the takeaway is you're going to work on it and come back
The
to us.
takeaway is honestly, I think that we actually have better information, and we've shared the information. So the schedules that went out actually had the deductibles associated with them, the useful life that we think that it is. So yes, we are going to work on it, but I do think it's going to be really great information for now and in the future. I think that it's a great stepping stone. So, but we've coordinated with all the departments, and that's a big deal. So yes, we'll be more ready than not.
Yeah, all right, so you'll come back to us when
Yes.
you're ready to further present. All right, well, the next item, that's it for old business, new business. Item 8 on the agenda, 8A is the Funds Canine Program.
Good evening. As you know, we requested to do a canine program, and the Brentwood Police Foundation was tasked with raising money to do that. They did a wonderful job, raised most of all the money for the dog, the training, the car. We matched the foundation's funding with a grant for the vehicle as well. So as we sit today, the foundation, like a lot of charitable organizations, is stalled, I guess you would say, in terms of raising money. So we have bills that need to be paid for Red, food, his additional training. All these dogs need additional training as they go through their lifespan as a canine, and then vet bills, things like that. So these are the items that I went to BOLA with to ask how we need to pay for these, because it's, when we looked at the canine program last year, the hope was that the foundation would cover all the costs of this program, and as I stand here before you today, that's not going to be the case going forward unless something changes with them raising additional funds, and that could happen. There's talk of that. In the interim, we have to feed Red. So I suggested to BOLA that we use asset forfeiture for the same reasons I just told you, that we were trying to keep the scope of this program outside expensing the city. That was my thought process. Personally, I'm just looking for direction from either BOLA and you. We can take it out of either our regular budget, or we can take it out of asset forfeiture. It really doesn't matter, because the categories are there for both sides. So we were just looking for direction on that.
if you took it out of asset forfeiture and then the foundation does raise money, you can't replace the asset forfeiture funds. So the only way that we could sort of reimburse a fund is if it were coming out of regular capital general fund. Or can you, or does it just get,
Waterbed.
yeah,
I
right.
think the closest thing that they could potentially do would be a donation, and then it would strictly be just general fund revenue. Would be just shooting off the hip. But no, you cannot replace asset forfeiture funds. That's a federally.
I think he's asking if we took it out of our regular budget.
If you took it out of regular funds, and then once again, I don't know that we would necessarily invoice them sort of like we do with the library or other things like that, because I don't know how they're structured on their end, but at best guess, once again, without asking legal or getting some other
Yeah,
direction.
but I mean, obviously, red's an ongoing expense. It's not like you
Yes.
pay for it and it's done. It's, so I guess if they did, it just reduces the burden for next budget year or something like that.
Correct, correct.
Just makes sense. It's a dog that's owned by the city now,
Right,
right?
right.
To just fund it out of general fund going forward, rather than tapping into asset forfeiture where there could possibly other meaningful use for it, right? I don't mean that. Just a thought, and I haven't talked to you about this, but I'm thinking the cost is minimal, which means you could be able to fund it within your general fund budget.
We projected about $6,500 a year between training and food and pet bills and things like that. So it's not a lot of money, no.
Yeah, my thought would be that if the foundation, like, it's about $6,500 a year, and if your budget can absorb it, then that's great. And if the foundation raises money, then that's money that you wouldn't otherwise have to spend. But I don't think we should ask, I mean, if they're raising money, the dog's gonna have ongoing costs. It's not like a fixed, it's not like we bought a car and they can make a donation that we can use for the car. If they raise money, we're probably gonna have to spend city money, and if they raise money, it seems like a lot to think that they're gonna raise $6,500 a year ongoing, because they, so, I think if they raise money, it's gravy.
So take it out of our regular budget, is that the recommendation?
Consensus, and I
Yep,
concur
okay.
with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is 8.
Oh, could we go back for that for a second? So, we said that, but then in 2029, there's a car. So,
I didn't hear you, ma'am.
so we said, like, I'm thinking $6,500 a year for the dog, but then when we get to 2029, there's a car, and the canine vehicle would likely need to be replaced. So are we, like, by blanket consensus, sort of saying that we think the car ought to go there too, or should that be a focus of the?
So if you're asking my opinion, to me, the dog and the car are gonna have about the same lifespan.
Okay, so you,
So there is no, what happens in 8 years? What happens, well, it's about, canines are roughly about an 8-year expectation.
right, well, and they live longer than they're useful as a police
Right.
dog too, yeah, I would
Right,
imagine.
hopefully it lives
Yeah,
longer
yeah.
than 8 years, but that's their typical usefulness as a police dog. So the car will not need to be replaced in
Okay,
theory,
great.
unless you all decide to get a dog. I will probably be fishing when you make that decision, so.
Okay, so I was just wanting to make sure we weren't just agreeing to add another vehicle to the vehicle replacement
Well,
policy by this.
actually, I think it's a conversation you all need to have, unless you're saying that when it comes to the end of that useful life, how are we gonna buy that car? And I thought that Michelle had indicated we've incorporated it into the capital improvement, have we not?
Yes, I mean, the purchase of any car and the cars we keep insurance on are part of our fleet, we incorporate into, as an addition into the replacement program, yes.
So it would be included.
Yes.
Is it fair to say that now is a good time to discuss whether we replace red? I mean,
Wow.
I mean, maybe from a, I mean, and that is something I would love to kick over to public safety. But I'm just saying, I mean, if we're not going to be.
From a strategic standpoint.
standpoint.
I'm trying to.
Useful life of a canine dog is 7
He works
years.
for a therapy dog.
Or
20
organization,
years.
Never sees this meeting.
What is the useful life of a canine dog? 20 years.
8 years.
8
And
years.
so, I mean, that's we plan out, more than that horizon on a lot of assets. I mean, so I think that's a valid question. Well, when Red goes to retire, are we going to replace him? And if so, we need to plan for it.
But I think you're right, though. That conversation should start at Public Safety Committee.
Right.
From a philosophical, is the program,
But it does dovetail into what we were just talking about in terms of our vehicle replacement policy.
Yes, and the vehicle that's on the memo was the EV vehicle to be replaced, because that was the original discussion, so, okay. Right. Yes.
Safety, and they will have a discussion led by Chief Spees regarding the useful life of Red.
and Red's vehicle.
I mean, I think now, I'm not heartless, but now is the time to talk about it, not when Red retires and, perhaps we have increased emotion about that.
Asked for this.
Yes, ma'am.
Can we talk about the part of the memo that has the replacement of the EV vehicle at 2029? That just seems excessively quick.
So when I did
You don't
work
even have
with-
it in possession.
When I worked with Angie from the police department to at least start to draft the memo and assist in this, we tried to follow the current replacement program, knowing that it would sort of kick off the conversation, saying that this is an aggressive approach, but currently the policy states that this would be a natural replacement schedule and prompt the conversation, so.
Wait, are we still on 7B? I'm a little confused.
Yes.
I mean, I thought the takeaway there was that they need to work on it.
No, but it's in the
Here.
memo.
Yes.
It's in 8A.
Right.
Memo.
There's Red's vehicle, then there's the EV vehicle. So there's 3 discussion points in this one item.
8A.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that one of the things to consider there is that the electric vehicle is being purchased with asset forfeiture funds. And
Correct.
so consider that you cannot supplant using asset forfeiture money to buy something the city's supposed to buy. So this is an add-on vehicle for us, which is what we tried to explain about the EV. It's to do traffic enforcement, additional details, things like that for our officers, above and beyond what the city has supplied us for vehicles. So as you look at replacement of that car, that's where, to me, it gets confusing. Michelle and I have talked about this. Frankly, I don't think that's a vehicle that goes into the replacement program unless it somehow has to. But realistically, if that car lasts 8, 9, or 10 years, which it could, depending on how the electric vehicles handle police work, the question then is that car going to be replaced in 8, 9, 10 years? And the answer to that is no. Not with asset forfeiture money, unless the chief at that time has the money to do that.
Right, and that conversation transpired at Public Safety, which is why we didn't change the memo, because they then kicked it to here to just make sure that everybody was sort of on the same page with the discussion, so.
Well, just to go on record again, when I made a motion, I didn't go back and watch it, but when I made a motion during the budget process, my direction was we would buy the EV out of asset forfeiture and set aside asset forfeiture funds to replace it so that it didn't go into the vehicle replacement policy. Now, if that's not possible, or if you're thinking you're going to do this and this may not be a long-term vehicle for the police department, then that's a different thing. But in my mind, when we approved that, we were also tying up asset forfeiture until this vehicle is replaced in a number of years. So $6,500 a year for Red may work, but
Right.
that would also tie up those funds to replace the EV.
In the conversation that we had in that meeting, I think I misunderstood you, and my apologies for that. I should have defined that more clearly, in that as an asset forfeiture vehicle, at least my intention would be not to replace it using asset forfeiture or city money. The example of this to me would be, we asked for an upgrade of weapon systems of guns using asset forfeiture money, which was approved. We did that because these guns are more effective. Officers shoot them better. They're more protective, things like that. So the point is, the electric vehicle allows us to do our job more thoroughly, better, whatever. That's the purpose of an asset forfeiture purchase. So when you start looking at replacing that car 8, 9, 10 years from now, I mean, that encumbering money in asset forfeiture for that replacement, to me, doesn't make any sense. It's a one-time purchase, so to speak.
Well, that was certainly my intent when we
Right.
put that through the budget, and that was my intent in that memo, or in my motion at the time. I'd have to really go back and look at it to see what we said, and, you know, it was just our committee, not the full board, but that was certainly my intent, that
Okay.
the money would get wrapped up and then replaced later with that money.
That would be on the assumption that you want to replace it, though,
Right.
10
but
years from
10
now,
years
or
from now.
whatever it is. And again,
I,
that-
I wouldn't
misunderstood.
understand how we would purchase a vehicle without the intent of replacing it.
Because it's an additional vehicle to assist the police department to do their job better. That's what asset forfeiture is designed to do. It's an add-on,
I understand the funding,
but it's an
which is
add-on.
different,
Yeah,
but the purpose of the vehicle, once the city owns it, how do you decide you're not gonna replace it?
again, it's designed to be an add-on vehicle to do certain details for the police to function better. So if in 8, 9, 10 years it's needed again, then that decision could be made to replace it with asset forfeiture if you have it.
So do we have an opinion from the feds that we can't use it? Because I thought the direction at the time was that we would set aside fund balance within asset forfeiture to make sure that that funding is preserved for future expense.
Correct.
I don't think that, it's not that we can't do that, but we'd be tying that asset, basically you tie that asset forfeiture money up for probably 10 years.
And that would be the intent.
Correct.
How long that lasts, which obviously is gonna limit what we can do with that money, so. But if the intention is not
That was
to,
the intent I think I seconded it. That was the intent of that plan. Because of, now, I mean, as things evolve and maybe the auto market, you know, advances and, you know, it may be a different story, but the idea is that because they are 2 times the cost of, or, you know, a significant cost, using asset forfeiture rather than general fund and reducing everybody else's capital improvements for taxpayer funding was a more responsible thing to do, and then to say, okay, we'll get through at least the replacement of that, and then that gives us a good window of time to test it and see, and if it becomes a valuable asset and it's something that we think more fleet does, then we've got some things that then we start changing regular fleet over with, not asset forfeiture, but, you know, so it was a way for us to invest in testing this without tying up taxpayer money because it comes from this other fund.
one of the reasons we did pick that car, by the way, it's actually cheaper than the Tahoes are. So cost per car is actually less.
Well, that's good. Good. I mean, but because of its size, though, it's not as, it's fine for traffic enforcement, but it's not practical for,
Well, it's gonna get multi-used. I mean, there'll be other uses for it, so that'll be one of the questions we'll be able to answer. Is it gonna handle a daily police?
yeah, maybe it will,
Yes.
maybe it won't, I don't
Right.
know. Certainly it'll be better than the Mustang.
Absolutely.
And if it does, and it's cheaper than the,
Not much cheaper, but they're a little cheaper than
but,
the
yeah.
Tahoes.
So
And if they last longer, then it's a.
where do we stand?
And I don't know.
No change.
No change.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then I guess just to be clear, the ongoing maintenance of red is being absorbed out of that effect, or?
No, and that will be reflected going forward in the 26 budget. So that will just start to be reflected, and just so as you see increased costs, we sort of know where they came from and why and how, but.
Yeah, you would move forward, and I asked a question, so I
Placement.
apologize for cutting you off, Chairwoman Sims.
In dog years, I just aged. So, thank you for this opportunity. Just here to present a proposal to replace an aging ambulance. That unit was originally purchased and placed in service in 2012. It is a Ford MedTech MedTech is no longer in business. So that is a contributing factor in this. Well, the volatility of for 2025. Along with that, the timeline to replace these units continues to be 24 plus months. Most ambulance companies that we spoke with are offering an agreeable or a contracted price point to secure the place in line for the build of the ambulance, in addition to securing that price for the future payment. So no transactions occur until the delivery of the vehicle is made. The 2012 is up for replacement according to the policy. It far exceeds the hours on that unit and the lifespan, so it will be 15 years old at that time. This unit has also had 2 critical failure points with the entire fuel system replaced and the engine replaced in 2021. So with that, we received a proposal from Foster Coach. We have had a relationship with them for a number of years. Foster worked with us on the trade-in value of the 2012, which we feel is very competitive based off our last ambulance that we sold on GovDeals. It was slightly more than twice the price of what we sold a previous ambulance on. With the successful application for the cardiac monitors of $100,000, that price point is removed from our budgeted amount in 27, so that was a reduction for the budget process in 27 as well. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Alderman Gould?
So, so this trade-in amount that they gave you, that's the trade-in when we trade it in 2027?
That is correct.
And so in none of this, do we have to make any payments on this until we receive the vehicle? So this is just getting under contract, getting the process started so that by 2027, which we've already put in the capital improvement
Yes.
budget plan, we would be able to actually make this purchase?
Yes, you are correct.
Okay.
And that is exact process that we're going with the fire engine as well that we signed in 2022. The same applies to this purchase.
Okay, so this doesn't change necessarily what's been budgeted, but it just gets us going.
Correct.
Okay.
I will say there is, I apologize if I interrupted, there's 2 components that are not included in this price because we have to wait for the market to get there, and that's on the power load system and the stretcher. So that entire system comes from Stryker, the same people that provide the cardiac monitor. We would purchase that in 27. They would install it in 27, but that is not included in this price.
All right, well, I guess I make a motion to enter into an agreement with Foster Coach Sales Incorporated for the purchase and construction of a new ambulance.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion by Alderman Gould and a second by Alderwoman Tice. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Chairwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderman Erger?
Yes.
Motion carries by a vote of 4 to 0.
Thank you.
8C on the agenda is fiscal year 2024 budget amendment. Who's got that?
As part of the audit process, we need to do a budget amendment and then it will need an approval as well. But I would like to sort of point out some of the things that we did in 2024. We did a 3% salary incentive. You did a compensation study back to January and funded the entire year. We reconciled with St. Louis County. 2 TIFs were also closed. We did the FEMA purchases and accelerated some of those purchases. Purchased a future Public Works garage. And then we had legal fees also, just based upon some of the pending items, will be one of the adjustments. And then just based upon some conversations, we moved funding of $589,000 from general fund for part of the debt payment to EDST. So we really did accomplish a lot in 2024. There are several budget amendments in here and recommendations that seem aggressive or are just sort of out of the norm. But once again, purchasing the future Public Works garage, doing some accelerated payments, reconciling with St. Louis County, those were big items. So if you have any questions about the budget amendment in and of itself, these were some of the driving factors, once again, that speak to this amendment and some of its categories. Any immediate questions about the budget amendment? Is there an ordinance associated? I believe it needs a vote.
I guess I'm not seeing other questions, so Chair, I'd entertain a motion to approve the budget in the form attached.
So moved.
All right, we've got a motion made by Alderwoman Tice and a second by Alderman Gould. Is there any further discussion? Not seeing any. Roll call, please.
Chairwoman Sims.
Yes.
Alderman Gould.
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice.
Yes.
Alderman Erger. Yes. Motion carries by 4-0.
Okay, thank you. Item 9 on the agenda is citizen comment. I'm only seeing employees in the gallery. Is there anyone online who wishes to
No, ma'am.
Okay, you are a citizen, yes?
I'm a citizen, but I'm actually, may I ask just a clarification on this vehicle replacement policy, and maybe this is more toward Dan. As we're looking at the vehicle replacement policy, I know we've had this, and I don't know what went into creating that policy years ago, but could we do the thing that I ask for almost every issue and see what several of our other municipal comparators do with their vehicle replacement policies, just to see if we're consistent with what others are doing?
You just want to see the thresholds then, like years, mileage?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
whatever.
Right.
I knew, I've spoken with Maplewood, I know that some of their vehicles, they've migrated to Enterprise. You know, so I know they've changed their policy just recently.
Oh, very interesting.
So,
Oh, there might be some good ideas we get from others, so yeah, that's good. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, well, seeing no further business, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everybody.